I think it might be a little bit of story time, Corey. What do you think?
I think a story time could be in order, Marks. We had a very fun time a couple weeks
Yes.
back, didn't we?
So, for context, I was in Cambridge for this.
I was newly in York. I had gone back to York, I think, around 4 p.m. the day before.
So,
Do
this,
you want to start off, or do you want me to
Where
start
I
off?
was.
so for a little bit of context, University Radio York is a radio station.
Funny that.
Can we just clip that? And just that's...
They have networking equipment. Some of that networking equipment is a router, barely knower, called URYFW0, short for Firewall 0, because it's also the firewall. And on the day that the events we are about to describe unfolded, was a very momentous day for URY. Why was that?
Well, it was because UOY had been working for, I want to say, year and a half more on
Michael Grace will
getting
probably
the
correct
station.
us.
Well,
Probably
it was,
even longer than maybe
it was
even
when
2
I
years.
was head of computing was when we started.
Christ, so even longer than that. It must have been like 2 years. That started to get onto DAB, which stands for Digital Audio Broadcasting. Unless I'm wrong, Michael Grace can correct me. I think that's what it stands for. But basically, like, pretty much industry standard for good sounding radio these days.
Yes. And this was
Um,
on the day that we were due to finally go live on DAB. In the evening, we had like a big event, celebration-y thing planned for it.
Mhm.
I wake up in the morning and I see a Slack message from...
Well, so I think we should start the day before, actually, because a
Yes.
couple of things happened the day before that sort of led into this. So, the day before, one of the people who was involved in the DAB stuff went in the studio to do, like, I can't remember what he was doing, but he opened up the browsers in the two studios and noticed the internet wasn't working. And we found out this was because their traffic's proxied through FW0 and the proxy had crashed. So
We restarted
we
it.
restarted the proxy and it
was
worked
fine.
briefly, as far as I'm aware. I don't know if it worked like a little while after that, but
Yeah, this
restarted
is
it,
important.
and it was
At
fine.
some point after we restarted it, it ceased to work again. Then,
Yeah.
the morning of the DAB tournament, which I believe was a Saturday, but could be wrong. Someone check the calendar. The date's
yes,
on the
it was a Saturday.
Yes,
Wait, no,
It was
it
a
was a
Sunday.
Sunday. It was a Sunday.
it was a Sunday. Yes.
Yeah.
I wake up to a message saying that internet has died again. So I
I
remotely,
also woke up to this.
I remotely from
Sorry.
Cambridge log on to FW0 to restart it, and it refuses to restart. And I go and look in the logs, and I see that it is having issues reading from and writing to its primary hard disk. I do a little bit more digging, and I have issues creating a file in my own home directory, and the disk is not full. Which can
At
only
which
mean
point we
one
panic.
thing. It means the drive has crashed.
It means the drive is dead.
Or at least
It's
is
gone.
either is dead or is about to be dead.
Yes.
So obviously, Marks, you were doing this from Cambridge, right?
Yes. We immediately
Or wherever you were
dispatched
at the
a
time.
person to do on-site maintenance.
Which was me. So, at the point that I left the house, I thought like I was just gonna turn off the proxy on the browsers and it'd be done with it. I left the house. I started walking. I walked for about a minute, and I pull out my phone to Mark taking a screenshot of them not being able to create a file in their home directory, and just the words FW0 is in a bad place. At which point, I'm just sprinting towards campus, just like, oh shit, oh fuck, it's dead, it's gone, it's. I think what we were saying is it could have went down at any second at that point. I think is fair enough.
Or
to say.
rather, what we said is, if it goes down, it's not coming back.
Yes.
For
That was
con-
like if we restarted it, it probably wasn't going to come back up because I think it was pretty much just running off of what was in RAM.
Important
time.
context for those not in the know. We can get the radio can get fined by Ofcom if they go silent, and obviously a lot
Go
of
silent without letting Ofcom know.
without letting
with a
Ofcom
good
know.
reason.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if we just went silent, we hadn't informed Ofcom that anything was happening, so we could have got fined.
And also because our audio, the UOI's audio has to go via FW0 to get through campus network to the transmitter, so FW0 going down will make us go silent.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can't remember when. No, I don't think I'd joined just yet. I remember now. I was down south.
So essentially, at this
Yeah.
point, we needed to make a decision. Do we either build a new FW0 out of servers that were lying about,
Mhm.
or do we swap out the hard drive and rebuild it in situ. We eventually went for the latter because that was the least risky option,
Yes.
or the least complex option.
And we were on a time limit because at about this was, I think, by the time we made the decision, it was about 12. And about,
11-ish,
I think it was
something
6.
like that. Yes, so we had a
12, 11-ish.
7-hour...
Yeah, I was on a train to come up for the big event that evening.
Yeah, I remember Joe walked into the stores as I'm like trying to figure out what we're doing and finding parts, and just goes, "Don't worry, Michael Grace is en route." And I genuinely had a sigh of relief in that moment.
Yeah, but crucially, I was reading all of these messages on the train, actively ignoring it.
I remember I'd set up. My mum has because I was at my parents' house at the time, and my mum has a work desk in the living room, and I'd already docked my laptop and was logging in, going, "Oh my god." I was ready. I wasn't particularly helpful, but I was ready to go if you needed me.
So essentially, what we then had to do is get a installer for Debian Linux, the OS that it's running, onto a USB. I'm not going to go into the details for the sake of time, but suffice it to say, it was an ordeal.
It took a
But
while.
your
Bit of an
USB went
ordeal.
missing.
Yes,
I liked that.
the USB that URY uses to flash new OSs to computers and servers. That went missing.
Missing.
Hadn't been found since.
It went missing. Luckily, I have a personal one that happened to be on my keys,
I also have a personal one. It's very handy to have.
which did
Would
mean I
recommend.
got to coin the phrase broadcast critical house keys at one point during the day.
yes,
Not technically broadcast critical, but it's a funny phrase.
it is. Yeah.
So then, eventually that's happened. And before we took down the old router for good, I had essentially taken copies of whatever important configs that I could. And initially I'd store them in my shell history. Then I realized that's a bad idea because one accidental hit of Command K would wipe it. So then I stored it into open Visual Studio Code tabs, not saving them to disk just yet, just dumping them in there. And then eventually I saved them to disk and uploaded them to Google Drive.
Yes. Which I believe. Still
Also,
there to this day.
obviously, we did also keep regular backups as well.
Yes,
this
we
wasn't
do.
like a one
Just
chance to
emphasize.
backup or.
But just to be safe, in case there had been any changes since the last backup, I made a set of my own.
You want a
Yeah.
backup of a backup. It's always good to have.
Yes, the rule is 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
Exactly. And 3 is ideal.
Woo, mathematics.
Exactly.
How's Moyles doing?
Your problem.
Anyway,
Oh.
speaking of FW0, have you guys got any closing remarks about it?
Well, we got it up. There was a bunch of follow-up things that needed fixing, but we got it up was I think like half an hour to an hour before the big event of that evening that relied on the station having working networking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, it was interesting because at one point we didn't know the credentials to our TX computer, which was good.
Whoops.
But we did find that
That's
in the
good.
end. But yeah, speaking of this Firewall Zero story, actually, we're going to have a bit of a segment.
This isn't the only time we have had a similar incident with a hard drive ceasing to drive.
I'm going to leave again because I only came to say that Corey was correct about DAB.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You will
Yeah.
leave and be rejoined because, yes, in student media at York, we have a sort of unfortunate tradition of hard drives going pop at really inopportune times,
Yeah,
I think is the way
Yeah.
to describe it.
yeah.
On the YCV History Wiki, there's a series of articles, I got the words out, called Drive Crashes, which is exactly what you think it is. Several of us have been involved in some of them. Some of us more than others. So
Some
the
of them
last-
affected your eye as well.
Yes. Some
Welcome
of
to the sofa, Matt Strat.
Hello.
Matthew, when did you join YSTV/URY?
I think I, in theory, joined your eye first by... No, I joined YSTV first in approximately term 1 of my first year in 2016.
Christ.
Um,
He's old.
yeah. And by second year, I was head of computing for both UOI and YSTV. That was nearly a train wreck. It was a train wreck to the degree, but I managed to pump up my numbers by the third year.
No comment.
But yeah, so we got to the story I'm thinking of, and you guys have got all the YSTV ones, which were many late nights of various machines for various reasons. And
one early morning,
you're,
specifically on a big event.
yes, well, the one that
We'll
I'm
get to
thinking
that.
of that you won't know about is your Y typically ends up doing like you have the September open days for the uni, and we try and blast music out at as many people as possible. And we had a lovely time where the music drive in Your Way just kind of decided, degraded raid. Drive goes missing. Then ZFS becomes very unhappy. And we need to play some music. So we ran... once I managed to convince ZFS... keep going, please. We managed to get away with doing an entire Saturday of this open day. And while I was doing that, I was messaging in the Slack telling them that I need to emergency pass several hard drives, and we replaced the music raid that afternoon. Well, not afternoon. I guess it would, even with Amazon, that's a couple of days delivery, but eventually we put a brand new storage thing in, and hopefully that still lives and is still healthy. But it's Western Digital drives, which I always have problems with. So who knows?
Hopefully, it'll last for another year, so it's not my problem. Hopefully, it's
student
just someone
media.
else's.
Other ones that have occurred as I am chewing through. There's Drive Crash 4 at YSTV, I believe is the first one you were directly involved in. This would have been
Possibly.
end of end of the 2017 academic year, 16-17.
Okay, what did it affect?
It affected Backup. The server named Backup.
Oh, yeah, the one that then got dismantled and disappeared across the entirety of the tech office. That was helpful.
My favorite part is Drive Crash told by Slack computing channel topics, which starts with. So in Slack, we have a sort of joking tradition that we set the topic to DEFCON, description of current situation, and then get to change it. This Drive Crash, as told by DEFCON statuses, are secure seatbelts for crash, managed to avoid crash for now, Attenborough's OS drive failure, everything is sort of mostly fine, everything is not fine, everything is getting finer 40 megabit per second at a time, now backup is dying, and finally, that one was posted at 3:19 a.m.
Oh, I remember what this was. This was when I was ambitious and decided to redo the entirety of how all the computing and AV racks at the time existed. And so that meant moving every machine from its nice resting point that had probably been there for several years and suddenly shaking it around a lot. So that was probably how that happened.
Classic, that.
Yeah.
And then the final message, 8:40 a.m., probably the next day. Everything is fine? Question mark?
I think that's just you're waiting for ZFS, because ZFS rebuilds on hard drives is slow.
It takes
If you've
ages.
got many terabytes in effectively, like, I think Attenborough used to be like 500 gig disks times 8. Because
Yes.
computer science gave us loads of 500 gig disks, and we went, all right, we'll use those then, and we'll have two can die in theory. But yeah, that thing used to really slowly rebuild. You'd have to just do it, hope that another drive doesn't die by the time you wait 6 hours for it to build.
The other thing is redoing that also puts a lot of strain on the other drives.
Yep.
So you really can kill them just by putting a new drive in. You'll put one in and the others will go.
Yeah.
It's like
Then-
whack-a-mole trying to get it to work.
Exactly, yeah.
A very risky whack-a-mole.
My favourite kind of whack-a-mole.
The next one on the wiki, I believe, was September 2020. This was Drive Crash 5, Don't Rain on My Parade.
Very funny.
Oh.
I didn't write this, for the record.
It's only better because they capitalized it correctly in the title.
Yes. This was primarily experienced by former computer director Rhys Milling of Rhys Milling fame.
Yeah.
The Welsh delegate.
Who, at 16:45 on the 14th September 2020, officially declared a state of not ideal
Yeah.
while attempting to swap Webb's hard drive array. Then the other entries, because this one is told on the form of a timeline, other notable entries include 1730, Reese's phone is dying and he needs food. 1829, Stargate is out of disk space.
Brilliant.
1930, Reese is bleeding. 2005, Reese is still bleeding. Also, single user mode gives Matstrat unhappy memories.
What was I in September 2020?
You'd have graduated.
Yeah. Well, it must have been alive enough to be network accessible then.
Probably.
That
Well, no,
was
because
up
it'd be
for
single
Freshers'
user
Fair, was
mode.
it?
It wouldn't have networked.
Oh, I must have
That would
just
have been like the week
there.
before. Also, this would have been COVID Freshers Fair.
Yeah.
Then, 2153 motherboard swapped and web is posting.
Nice.
And then at 3 p.m. the next day, 4 p.m. the next day, normality is restored. And then we get to the most famous one of the people here.
Yes, in
Drive
recent memory.
Crash 6. The Great Roses 2023 Drive Crash.
Yes.
Oh no.
This was... I will just tell it through the first paragraph of the wiki entry, which I believe I wrote.
Yeah, I believe you did.
Over the
You
Easter
did, 'cause
holidays, Jamie, Dan, and this Muppet were upgrading our primary web server, which is a bit of a potato at the time. As part of this, they replaced the motherboard and realized the new motherboard had one fewer SATA connector than the old one. They got very concerned until they realized that one of the hard drives wasn't actually in use at all, either as part of the RAID array or otherwise mounted, and the server worked perfectly fine without it.
Yeah.
This drive was labeled the mystery drive, according to my pigeonhole. What we didn't realize is the drive probably was part of the array until it had presumably at some point previously failed. That's probably what all those emails were about.
Probably. The problem is, at the time, our computing director had the Compilates channel silenced on Slack.
And the emails null rooted.
And I was going to say, and auto-deleted any emails.
So
from
what
it.
had happened here is that the RAID array worked as designed until another drive failed, which just so happened to be on around 10 a.m. on Friday, 28th April 2023, also known as the first day of Roses.
Roses being the competition where we really need that server to work for
Because
about
this was the
6
biggest
concurrent
Roses we had
streams.
ever done, with I believe the plan being 9 concurrent
Oh,
streams.
yeah, it was 9, yes.
Which we did
Yeah,
briefly
I
hit.
was just a baby fresher at this point, but I just remember, like, no, I wasn't even a member of YCV at the time, and just hearing, it's fucked, it's shit, it's fucked, everything's broke, and me going, what the fuck do you mean, what?
It was
We-
not ideal.
We had to keep it. We had to keep it alive just enough to do broadcasting, because also the web pages for the graphics was running through this server. So
Yes.
there were plenty of bodges put in to keep various things going, including commenting out various bits of configuration that had important things like check that a password is given, which
Yeah.
commented those out. Though the most spectacular bodge is that very briefly the HTTP request for the graphics for the streams was proxied through URY,
Nice.
Yes,
Which, you
URY,
got a bit
which
of the
meant
URL wrong.
which meant URY
Go.
was broadcast critical and also had a wildcard HTTPS private key for *prod.ystv.co.uk.
and it also meant
Nice.
if you spelt or like got the URL wrong for the graphics, which everyone does because it was a really long one at the time, it would immediately take you to URY, which confused all of the YSTV commentators.
I think I was looking at URY's Nginx config the other day, and the config file, I don't think it's in use anymore, but the config file titled ystv-ssl.conf still exists in our
Yeah,
Nginx
that'll have been that
config.
one. The
Which
certificate
will
has
be
long
for
since
that.
expired.
It's
Oh,
brilliant.
I'm sure it has.